80% of women would experience some sort of shift in their priorities. Just thinking about my friends and the amount of, who of us are not working, who of us are working part-time, who of us are working full-time, and the reasons behind that. I don't even know how to explain it. I mean, if you're a parent, then I don't even need to explain it, but you know what it feels like to be like, okay, now it's not just about us anymore. Like, we've got to factor in someone, and it's not even about having more purpose or anything. It's literally about, okay, we can't just get up and go and have dinner. We've got another child that we need to make sure has got care, or what am I going to do for work? I've got to make sure this person's cared for, and it just changes a lot of things that you may never think about.
Today on the podcast, we've got Jayde Jenkins that's joining us. Our last episode obviously ticked off. We had quite a bit of traction there and a lot of relatability, particularly for, I guess, mothers and people looking to start out and build a business. Thanks so much for joining us on the podcast.
Thanks for having me, guys. Always love having a chat with you guys.
Beautiful.
So, Jayde, I had some thoughts around today, particularly what a lot of people asking questions around. We got some engagement around was finances relating to building a family or having children. So what's some of your advice in the early stages of that? Let's say a young couple who are planning to have kids in the near future.
Yeah, it's quite challenging at the moment, I think, to plan to have a family in this economy and whatever's going on, especially if you live in the city. So what I've been sort of talking to my clients about, if they're thinking about having kids, is going, okay, like, how old are you realistically? What kind of time frame do we have? Do we have 2 years? Do we have 5 years up our sleeve? What are we looking at? And then learning how to budget on one income, basically. Like, how far can that one income get you? Which I think is a pretty good wake-up call to say, okay, this, we're not earning enough as a family unit to make this happen. So dropping down to one income, make up a savings account and put one person's income into that. And then obviously you're going to need to use it more than likely to live on. So just trying to figure out, how much can you actually afford to live on, or how much, room do you have to move there? And then thinking about, do you need to increase your income? So how are you doing that? Is it a promotion through work? Is it upskilling? And that's why the timeline is really important, because you might need to go to uni to get these sort of salaries that you might need. You might want to start a business. You might need some years up your sleeve to get that kicked off. So I think the biggest piece of advice is to young people is to try and increase your mortgage. Don't increase your mortgage.
Load up on
Increase your income as much as you can. And I get that that's not just a throwaway comment. Like, I know it's hard as an employer and as an employee. You can't just go to your boss and say, hey, I need another 5% in my
double
pocket.
Double my pay, please.
Yeah. So it's working through, do you need to change employers? Do you need to change careers completely? Do you need to do something totally different? And being honest with yourself, like, are you in an industry that's going to be able to pay you any much more than what you're on now? So, childcare industry, retail industry, those sort of things that maybe are typically a little bit lower paying. What are you doing? And do you have some skills that you could transfer elsewhere?
Yeah, so it's a interesting point. So obviously the more time you have up your sleeve, the more impact you can potentially have on things like increasing your income. Where if you're planning to have a kid in 3 to 5 years versus 6 months, you might be able to have more of an impact there. And why is it that you focus on just the one income? What's the thought around that?
So we know that women are returning to work. So I think we've spoken about it before. It might take up to 7 years to get your pre-earning capacity back. But did you want to have a guess at the percentage of women in the workforce? How much of them are actually working full-time as a percentage?
My guess is 63.25%.
I would say full-time, maybe 60, 70%.
39%.
Wow.
That's
of
shocking.
all women in the workforce. And this is a government study. This is not just a random number.
Yeah.
So that tells me that once you have kids, there's not a lot of us going back to work full time, and that part-time income can quickly get eroded by childcare fees.
Well, we've from experiencing it personally, it's next to near impossible. And if you do, there's a lot of guilt associated with having your little one in kindy 12 hours a day as well. So it's we sort of had plans. We had our daughter when we were quite young. I think we were 21 at the time. It certainly wasn't a pre-planned situation there. And we sort of thought, yep, okay, Mariah will have some months off and then go back to normal, and we'll utilize we have some family that can help look after her, and combination of that and childcare, and it'll all be cruisy. And honestly, it was a nightmare.
Yeah.
Her working full time was just chaos. The house was an absolute mess. We felt like we were neglecting our daughter. I was riddled with guilt. We had absolutely no money still somehow.
Yep.
And yeah, I think it's a challenge a lot of my friends are now having and going through. And I think a big result of that is that less of my friends are even having kids. Like so many of them just opting out to the whole thing because it all seems too hard.
So that's a very common trend. So we know that the fertility rate in Australia, which is like how many children a woman is having, is sitting at 1.5 at the moment on average. So to actually replace Australia's economy, we need families to have 2.1 kids. So we need most people to have 3 kids.
Yeah.
And that's not happening. So that means that we're obviously going to have to rely on migration to boost our economy. Otherwise, it'll stall and we'll start to have huge economic issues later down the track.
What do you say, Bart? One
That's-
for mum,
Well,
one for dad.
I made up a bit of a slogan. I don't even know where it's come from, but I said have one for mum, one for dad, and one for the country.
That came out in the 70s when they did the.
But it's true. Like I geek out on a lot of the the economic data and get in the depths of all of that. But globally, across a lot of developed countries, that's a trend that we're seeing is as the cost of living sort of squeezes start to happen, people just aren't having as many children.
It's the number one reason why we're not having more kids is the cost of living.
Yeah, and I've definitely personally felt the difference over the last few years. Just the regular grocery shop feels significantly different. Obviously, house prices is a major one. I guess it makes sense to have a plan and give yourself as much time to, like you said, increase income. What are some of the practical things? Obviously, changing jobs, changing industries as a whole. Do you see many examples of people actually making money from side gigs or weekend businesses or what are those sort of things?
I think you have to be careful with the side hustle because it can take more time than money it gives back to you. But there are weekend shift work jobs on a Sunday. I saw something the other day that was like forklift driving on a Sunday afternoon, $70 an hour. And I was like, oh, it's a nice little Sunday job sort of thing. So there are things around if you do, but like also how much time do you want to take away from your life in the chase of money? So that's why I try to talk to people more so about boosting their 9-to-5 income because then you're not taking away from your weekends. A side business, you know what it's like to start a business? It's not a side business. It's like your full-time job and then your business at night till midnight trying to get that going. So
and it's not necessarily guaranteed income right away either. Like often they take time to actually be profitable, depending on the business. Like if it's something that's a bit simpler, the economics are just like a service-based business, potentially it's a little bit easier to generate some profit faster. But if it's a e-commerce store or something like that, you might actually end up going backwards in the short term.
And I think that's really good to point out because there's a lot of women online who have been successful in doing these things. And I think a lot of women, once they have kids, you could be so career driven, but as soon as you have a child, that actually might change. And you might start going, hey, I actually don't want to go back to work. I remember being in tears before my first one, going like he's 10 months old going to daycare. I don't want to be away from my child. But went back to work. But there's so many vulnerable women that get caught out with these online MLMs or whatever it is that's like, this is how you can earn money and you can have your kids at home. Like, it doesn't work.
And a lot of the marketing is targeted directly to them because of the position they're in. There's that emotional trigger. They want to stay at home, but they need to support the household. And then, that's sort of tailored to that particular vulnerable state. So that's an interesting one. So make a plan, increase your income, work on the budget, working on one income, which is quite a tricky thing in the current cost of things. What are some practical things that people can do to reduce expenses, for example?
Yeah, I mean, and I always focus on increasing your income because you can only budget to a point.
Yeah.
And I think it's just all the normal things. Like, are you going to the gym? Are you using all the subscription services? Are you using cashback apps that you could be using to save a little bit of money here and there? Be honest with yourself about, are you an overspender? Because there are plenty of people that do just get a bit bored, start scrolling online.
Do you need the brand new Ford Raptor a year out?
Precisely. It's an essential. It's an essential.
Oh, it's if it, room for the baby. Yes.
Yeah, hey, I can tell you from experience, there ain't much room for
Yeah.
back of those things. My kids' knees are nearly touching.
So let's say you're a couple and you're in that sort of planning phase.
Yeah.
How does that conversation come about? Because you might have, I guess, one side that tends to overspend, the other sort of, focusing on, well, the reality of our world is going to change in a period of time over the next 2 years. What's a healthy way you can bring up a conversation as a couple so that your sort of goals align?
Yeah.
And I guess some practical steps that you can sort
Assu-
of bring about.
Assuming that you've been together a while and you're living together at least, don't, not necessarily married, but you would like to think that you've had some of these conversations. And I think there is a point in which some pre-child counselling is worthwhile because not everybody shares the same ideas on money or life or all of those things. And for the most part, I think the person whom we end up with, like, surely we agree with 90% of what each other's doing, but there might be a part that doesn't stick. And that not sticky part could be about money and it could be completely different. Like I have couples who keep their money completely different, completely separate from each other, and they kind of split bills and do all that stuff, even as a married person with children. So to me, that's quite crazy. And I think, how do you manage who pays for what? So, I'm more about like blending family money together, but then comes the issues with, well, I spent this week, you spent that, like that bickering sort of stuff.
Well, and that could, I imagine, being escalated in a situation where, just say you are keeping your money separate, and then all of a sudden one person's looking after the kids and the family, and
Yeah.
then one person's earning the money. Was it still separate? And this
Yeah.
person now doesn't have any money, and the other person controls all the money.
That's right.
Like
And then we
that can
start
get
going
toxic
down
pretty
deep
quick.
into stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that comes up a lot. And like even in my mum's group, like I've got a Facebook mum's group from 2020. And there have been situations of women in those situations where
Yeah, wow.
partners controlling money, they've got no access to money. And it's very common. I think it's like 1 in 6 women experience domestic financial abuse.
And is that because it's bad traits that have been picked up, or they just sort of not thinking the full picture through and understanding that it's a family? What stems from
I
that?
haven't seen enough of it, and I'm not a psychologist, I guess,
Yeah.
to comment, but I don't know. It's just obviously personality traits. A lot of it can be taken back to when we grew up. Like I talk a little bit about our money story. So we're either going to copy what our parents did growing up, or we're going to do the complete opposite. So if money was stressful, you probably will take those feelings about money through life. Or if things came easy to you, you might be a bit spendy because money keeps coming in and that's all okay. But as soon as you have two people with two different scenarios and the way they grew up and their thoughts about money, that's when it gets quite challenging.
So it pays to have that conversation before the little one's here, just to
Absolutely.
potentially avoid those situations. And it's, in my view, obviously marriage is a big deal, but having a child with someone
Yep.
is even a larger deal, regardless of how you feel about the person. You're going to have some interaction with them
Yeah.
Well,
over
you'd hope
an
so, yeah.
extended period of time. So it's obviously good to be on the same page with all
Yeah.
those things as well. In our my situation, my wife's currently home with little ones. That's a decision we made together that we felt was best, for our family. It isn't without the financial, hit there. We could be getting further ahead, but we've made the
Yeah.
decision that this is the better fit for us. And for us, it's a conversation of it's more the other way around. My wife then going and doing things for herself. There's like now a guilt associated with
Yeah.
that for her, which I want her to sort of spend money on herself, obviously in a reasonable way. We have other priorities and things like that, and not feel bad about it because like it is
Yeah. Family.
that joint family thing. There's certain things that she does that I don't have to worry about, so it sort of goes both
That's right.
ways.
Yeah, and keeping care of a home is like a huge job. And I think so. I was obviously self-employed for about 18 months. And what I realized during that time, sure, I had all this flexibility and my house was kept well because I was working from home. So I'd do the washing, I'd do the floors, I'd do maybe a couple of hours of housework during the day while I was working. And then I'd be up at night, kind of catch up from the day. And then I was a crappy mum because I wanted the kids to go to bed so I could go back to work. And it's just like that snowball. So that taught me about the importance of having someone available in the home, even if it's not full time. Like I still work, so I work 4 days a week now. But that Wednesday at home, it's with the kids, but it's also an opportunity to take stock of what's going on and
Yeah.
try and catch up from the stuff that didn't get done on the weekend and
Yeah,
Recalibrate
where's the
life.
house at? Do we have food?
do we have food?
Yeah.
A never ending problem.
Well, that's the thing. I think the role of a mother or a stay-at-home mother in the household is there's a whole bunch of tasks
Well, even a
and
stay-at-home
jobs.
parent, we have some friends of ours where it happened to be that the female was the higher income earner,
Yeah.
so it made more sense in that family situation for the father to be the main stay-at-home parent, and it's cool to see. It's come with its own unique challenges as well.
Yeah.
But I think just having that person, whoever that may be, to sort of keep stock of the household and make sure the kids are healthy and happy is a good thing.
The reality is there's a whole bunch of unpaid tasks.
It's 47 hours a week.
That's
Yeah.
it. And it's unaccounted for. It's clothes being washed, the house being clean, food on the table, running around managing kids. There's a lot going on top of if you're juggling work as well. Now, in my observation, because I obviously don't have children, but I've sort of observed a couple of my friends going through, the various different stages. And it seems like there are stages. So let's say you've had a couple that started out, they've got a young child. They're at the stage where they're going, well, what's next? Where are the main pitfalls or as you go through the seasons of planning for a child and then eventually, the child's into the world.
Let's just say it's that maternity leave stage where, 8.5 months pregnant. It's something. What's the sort of advice at that particular stage where it's imminent, it's happening?
Yes.
Hold
on. No,
Brace yourself.
I had these conversations with people who obviously you can only plan so much for these things. Like, let's be realistic. Like, in a perfect world, you'd have all this stuff sort of sorted. But let's just say that's not happened. I find too many of my clients in early childhood are trying to do too much. They're trying to get a house that's too big in terms of finances.
Yeah.
They're buying new cars. They're buying things that are expensive because they want to keep up with their friends or, we are earning a good income. So we should be able to live in this beautiful house. But what they're then doing is trading that money for potentially the opportunity to have someone at home on at least a part-time basis with the family. So I just see too much debt.
Factor in the true costs of that debt is the
Yes.
example I use. Like that, it's a really nice car, it's a really nice house, and you've done the figures and you've looked at the repayments. But is that repayment the difference between your kid playing a sport or spending time with them,
Yes.
or not? And actually factor in the true cost of all those things.
Yeah.
It might not make a difference, but it may.
Yes, very much so. So I've got 2 clients at the moment who one has just listed their house for sale. So, they might have bought for $800K. They've done this big, beautiful reno and it's worth about 1.6 now. They've got 3 kids under, I think, 7. They're earning around 210 between the 2 of them, maybe a little bit more now. But their debt is $1 million. So they owe $1 million on their house and they want to invest and they want to get an investment property. And basically I just said to them, there is no real cash flow available to do these things without giving away any of your lifestyle. So I said to them, it's very hard to leave a beautiful home that I'm sure you've put lots of time into. He was a builder. They've done this themselves. They have their friends and their family over and it's this beautiful home. I said, I know it's, hard to leave, but would you ever leave? Do you think you'll stay there? And they sort of said, oh, no, we'll stay. And I got a phone call 3 months later and they'd said, we were thinking about your question and we're going to sell. So they've now gone and we're about to sell and have downsized. So their loan will go from $1 million to $400,000 and they're not going to know themselves.
It's a different world with your mortgage being that different. Life's suddenly a lot easier.
And they've made lifestyle choices around this. So they're going into property with his brother. So it's a quite a big, I don't know how many acres, but a couple of acres. But the home itself is basically 2 homes. So it is split. They're not going to hear or see each other, but it's kind of under the one roof sort of thing.
Yep.
But they're happy with that. And I've got another client who you get to this point where you're earning really good money. So you buy these really good things and then you get locked into that income. So as soon as kids come along and your income drops, you're up shit creek without a paddle because you've locked yourself into needing to earn that kind of income. So these guys, again, have $1 million mortgage. They've got 2 little kids, and their income is not enough to service that debt, and they're going backwards essentially. So that home is worth like $2 million. They can get really good rent from that house. So for them, we're looking at renting their house out now, going and renting a cheaper place for a while until mum is in a position to go back to work more and to bring the family income back up. And then they'll potentially be able to go back into that home.
So there's some different strategies involved for different circumstances. I like what you mentioned around the multi-family situation as well. I think that's where available, and if you have the right
Yeah.
people around you, that's a situation to massively reduce costs. When I changed industries, we had 2 mortgages at the time. One we lived in, one investment property, and just to make sure we were covered because my income was reducing massively, we moved back in with my father-in-law,
Yeah.
and this was it was great. It was good for the kids, having more family around. There's obviously some some things you got to get used to as well, but it was just a way of making sure we could cover that. And then, so I think that's a thing we're seeing a lot more of as well. People, siblings buying together, friends buying together. There's obviously some risk with that as well.
Mhm.
Talk to me about maternity leave, because I know there's a lot of different sort of ways you can maybe optimize that or utilize that. What's your thoughts around that?
Yeah, so that's all changed in the last sort of year. So yeah, it depends. So a couple of things in terms of leave and like how you can be paid. If you work for a bigger company in Australia, it's pretty likely you'll actually have a paternity or maternity leave policy available to you. So it could be 10 weeks, it could be 20 weeks. If you're in a government job, it's more.
So if you were future planning, it would make sense to maybe pick a company that has a good policy
Yes.
around that.
I've actually helped one of my clients secure a job that was family friendly, basically, to make sure that there was a level of income, because you'll still then get the government income as long as you're below the thresholds, which have just recently changed. But I think for a single, it's like, I think for the primary person, it's like 180K or something less
Yeah.
than that a year. You'll get your 26 weeks of government paid. And I've got a couple of clients at the moment who are taking like a couple of days of that and then transitioning back into work. So they might be working 3 days a week, but they're getting kind of 5 days of pay because they're getting 2 days of the government leave in that. So it's gotten really flexible, which is helpful. But again, it just comes down to how much of a hit can you take, because it might be ideal to take your pay at half pay with work, and then all of a sudden you might end up with nearly a year paid leave. It's not going to be at your pay, obviously. It might be
Yeah.
at your half pay or something. But if you can get used to living on less of an income, then you're going to be able to take more time.
Yeah. And when that more time may not seem as a big of a deal until you go through it, and you're likely going to end up needing more time than you may think in a lot of
Yeah, I think
situations.
a lot of women change their mind when they're on leave
Yeah.
about when they're going back to work. And I know me personally, I said to my boss on the way out the door to maternity leave, okay, I want my full-time salary, and I'm going to do my 5 days across 4. Is that okay if I work bigger days? And he goes, I'll support you in whatever you want, but we're not having this conversation until you come back. And I was
Yeah,
like,
that's
okay. I came back, and he goes, right, do you want to do? I said, don't even talk to me about it. I'm like, I'm doing my 4 days. I'm in at 9. I'm going to 5. Like, not a minute overtime. I'm out of here.
It's a really interesting point, and I think it's not covered a lot, is how having a little one coming into the world can completely change your worldview. Like I've seen and observed it in real time. And you may be, whether you're a male or a female, someone's likely going to be a stay-at-home parent for a period of time. You might accustom to a particular lifestyle. New child comes into the world and you go, my whole worldview's changed. I'm not focused on the career anymore. And it's a part that people just aren't focused on, or they might not have dialed back their expenses in preparation for my worldview might be completely different in 12 or 24 months' time.
Absolutely.
How common is that across the board?
I would say 80% of women would experience some sort of shift in their priorities. Just thinking about my friends and the amount of, who of us are not working, who of us are working part-time, who of us are working full-time, and the reasons behind that. I don't even know how to explain it. I mean, if you're a parent, then I don't even need to explain it, but you know what it feels like to be like, okay, now it's not just about us anymore. Like we've got to factor in someone, and it's not even about having more purpose or anything. It's literally about, okay, we can't just get up and go and have dinner. We've got another child that we need to make sure has got care, or what am I going to do for work? I've got to make sure this person's cared for, and it just changes a lot of things that you may never think about. It's like when you get a dog for the first time and you're like, oh my gosh, this dog's so
Yeah.
much work.
Times 1,000. Yeah.
Times about 1,000. It's
Yeah.
just, you can't leave them on your own, unfortunately.
So maternity leave, consider getting in with the big companies that have a better policy.
Yeah.
Look at the flex options where you can do, half and taper the days and suit it to your situation. Like if someone say had a situation they were having that reduction in income, maybe if they had some like cash savings to supplement, and they did the figure around, okay, we're going backwards by $500 a week, but we've got X amount accounted for that year, so we're going to be fine.
Yeah. It is
Um,
all about that planning.
yeah.
Like, you need to know your budget. You need to know, and that's where I guess a lot of people come to us for advice because they're like, we're making this lifestyle change. Can we afford to do it or not?
Yeah. That's all really powerful stuff. So let's just say it's okay, maternity leave's over and someone's going back to say a part-time basis, being that's the most common situation, which is a surprise to me. And how would a family navigate the childcare costs and subsidies and what that looks like? Because I've heard a lot of people make the comment, and I've certainly experienced it as well. It's like, what's the point? Most of it's going towards childcare with the cost of childcare these days. So how can people navigate that?
It does feel like that, and childcare is significant, but I also think the childcare subsidy is significant. Like,
Mhm.
it's even changed so much in the last few years that when I first had my child, there was no second child subsidy. So you were sending both your children at, I guess, full subsidy price, whereas now you're probably getting an extra 20% back in your pocket for your second and subsequent children. So looping back to your question, I've just lost my train of thought. It's different for everybody, obviously, dependent on your income. But the easiest way to go and have a look at what you might be entitled to is there are a lot of calculators online that give you a pretty good idea what you're looking at being out of pocket. But I think it's pretty generous. Like if you're on a family income of around 200,000 and your kids are going to school 3 or 4 days a week, daycare 3 or 4 days a week, it's pretty generous what you're getting back from the government. And I also think women being in the workforce, you're keeping up your skills, you're keeping up your super contributions, you are still bringing money into the family unit. And it's often overlooked that when women have 10 years out of the workforce and they go back, they're just so far behind in their career that it takes a while to catch up
So
or
you're
they
keeping
miss
the
out on
skills sharp
jobs.
as well. So there's all those other benefits.
Yeah, not necessarily financial benefits, but keeping connections in the industry, keeping up with an industry. If you're in like a tech industry or something that's just moving so fast, is your job going to be redundant later? Like, do you need to literally go and have a career change off the back of having kids? So we're seeing that a lot as well.
What about the situation where, let's say it's a family business situation, and the male was the main person operating the business, and there's a situation where the female is working part-time, they may actually join into that business and help there. Do you see a risk there with them being both in the same business, or what's your thoughts around that?
Yeah, I guess like it is risky given that you're then funding all your super, you're funding like the family lifestyle and you're relying on that business to fund your lifestyle. So I think you need to be careful as a business owner and be true to yourself whether you should be funding the wages at the level that you are. If it's significant, I've seen a couple of businesses go under because they've just been paying themselves too much money. So I think you need to just be honest with yourself that can your partner actually bring that level of value to the business, or are you just draining wages to support your lifestyle sort of thing? So yeah, what are their skills, experience, what industry are you in? But I don't know, it might also be the best thing that you've done. My mum and dad have done it for 40 years, 30
Yeah.
years maybe. And I know plenty of other people that are, working in the family business, and that might be ideal. If you've got mum that's doing a little bit of work in the business, but she's also running the house, keeps the business going well, it keeps the house running well, it could be the ideal situation.
Yes, it's very circumstantial depending on the business and the couple. And
Yeah. And I mean, you've got risk of redundancies and all sorts of stuff when you're working for someone. You're not prone to losing your job in that sort of situation too. So I'll just say if it's the right thing for you and it keeps the family and everyone happy and the business well, then it's probably not a bad thing.
Have that honest conversation and sort of find out what the
Yes.
right balance, I guess, for yourself is.
Is it if you're a high income earner, it makes sense to split the wages between you and your partner as well, or different tax structures depending on what you're doing. So for some people, that's a really good idea.
I know you had mentioned some interesting stats around women returning to work, the income levels, and that sort of thing. Do you want to share any of those?
Yeah, so that's what we were sort of saying before. So we know that only 39% of women who are working full time. So that was surprising to me as well. And then we also had a little bit of information around, so actually back to that 39% stat. So from 10 years ago, that's increased from 35%. So that's slowly increasing. Maybe cost of living, I would probably put my hand down to on that. I probably didn't really have. Can we edit this out?
Yeah, that's good.
I was like, I'm just looking.
Put you on there.
Probably more so about like leaving work early.
Oh yeah. So what does that mean? Like the hours? Is that what you're referring to?
No, sorry. So like women, having time off in the workforce early. When they've got young children, then we know like 39% are working full time. Then at the back end of that, there's actually around 22% of women who are leaving early to care for elderly parents. So they kind of get it hit on both ends, that they're leaving their jobs at maybe 55 or 60 after only being back in the workforce for 10 or 15 years. So that's why there's such a big issue with women and retiring in this country with significantly less super than their partners. So it's something that's becoming more and more of an issue as opposed to getting better, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's interesting. And the stat increase from the 35% to 39% is interesting as well, because I wonder what all the the non-factored costs are there for families, and that's a tough one.
Well, it's a fairly significant chunk of time if you understand how compound interest works and how superannuation balances work. You've got a real wedge of time in between, raising young children, eventually them getting into school age, but then also on the other side, missing out on that right towards the end when the numbers are really starting to gain momentum.
Absolutely.
Retaining from the workforce, or maybe dialing back your hours to accommodate for elderly parents, or the nurturing side.
And then if you are retiring at 60, like sure you can access your super, but it's going to be less than what it would have been had you have worked full time during that whole period. So it's kind of like this whole schmozzle. I don't know.
That's one way to put it. It's a schmozzle.
I know that the government's looking at it, and it's a really interesting point that you said, like getting kids to school, because until my kids got to school, I also thought that was the hardest period. And then I went, daycare was easy. Like we could do 6 to 6 if we needed that time.
Yeah, we're busy day. You're a little bit later, no drama.
Didn't matter. So now we're like going into our first year of prep next year. We're actually getting an au pair because I can't guarantee that my husband's going to be home in the afternoon. And I don't necessarily want my little one at after school care 4 days a week. Like I know that some families do that and that's fine. But for us, I was just like, well, I know that he's going to be really tired in those first few months. Like I'd rather have him at home with us, and he's just not quite big enough to be at home while I'm working and entertain himself.
Hang on a second there, Jay. We're trying to encourage people to have one for themselves, one for the partner, and one for the country. We don't mean to scare you about the seasons sort of change.
I did tell I've said to my parents that if they ever moved to Queensland, I'd have one more, so that would get us 3. So it's again, that you need that external assistance. It's very true about what they say about needing a village to raise children.
Well, I think that's sort of historically what's happened a lot more. I know we have situation where we sort of have limited grandparents for our little ones, and I have some great siblings and all that help out, but it's definitely tougher not having that closer family environment to help with share the care and things like that. You mentioned going to school, so daycare's finished, and that's obviously a big cost. We always said, I don't know about private school, seems expensive, but then we're like, well, we've paid these daycare fees, so maybe we can afford it.
We've climatized a bit.
Honestly, that is my biggest joke, is like daycare is setting us up. There must be some relationship with schools here.
Yeah, they're paying comms somewhere as a referral agreement. Yeah.
Let them go 20 or 30 grand a year, may as well send them to school.
Yeah, exactly. So what are your thoughts on private school? Obviously, there's an extra cost there. What are some people, what are you seeing for people are doing in that situation?
I am learning the big public-private debate in Brisbane. I did not realise how passionate people are about sending their children to either public or private, or not to mention if they're starting at 4 or 5, that's a whole other conversation. Look, if you can afford it, go for it, but compound that money, and that is going to be quite significant later on. Obviously, you do have some lower cost private schooling, especially around Catholic education and whatnot. So if that's what you want to do, great. But I just be honest with yourself if you can afford it, because I've had clients who want to send their kids to these elite schools. I'm like, okay, that's like 30 grand a year per child, and you have 2 or 3 of them. Like, how are we going to do this? And
How
it's
much
sort of
better is the education to justify those kind of costs? Because there's, like you said, there's the cheaper private schools, and then there's the ones where it's kind of the status
Yeah.
private schools. Maybe is it's a guess of what I'm thinking. One of the
pay for
reasons.
brand name, right?
Yeah, the socializing with the other parents, maybe. But
Yeah.
all right, so obviously, again, it just comes back to having a plan. What can you afford? What's the reality of the budgeting? And I always like to think if the difference between going to this private school is the difference between your kid being able to participate in an outside of school activity, maybe it's better going to the slightly cheaper school and also being able to do the outside school activity like music lessons or sport or whatever that may be.
Yeah.
And then I also appreciate that there's not great public schools in every catchment. So we chose to go to public next year, but we chose out of catchment. So we didn't, even though our school's within walking distance, we chose not to go to that school just through various reasons. So I also appreciate that you might not be in a position where you want to send your child to the local public school. So then your next choice might be a lower cost private school as well.
Yeah. Let's say if you've got 2 children, because that's what we were discussing averages before, you've got 2 kids, they're at an age where, you've got a bit of time to prepare and you've made up your mind that you do want to send them to private school. What are some of the things I guess people can action, or what is even, call me naive, but what's the realistic cost if you're looking at, I'm assuming there's a range between an entry-level private school and an elite level. What sort of money are we talking, and what can we do to effectively prepare for that?
A local Catholic school might be $3,000 to $5,000 a year, and if you want to head into Villa or somewhere like that in the city, I don't know, what are they, 20 grand a year or something?
Yeah,
More,
I've seen
maybe?
some crazy
40, I don't know. I haven't even looked at it
examples.
because that's not. I think you've got to be related to people to get into those schools these days.
Yeah.
So there are things, obviously all you can do is save early. So if you can put a little bit of money away to do that, there are also education bonds which people can actually invest in, from when their children are born, put some money in, get family to put money into, and then later on use that to help fund private schooling. There are some other, like, I don't actually know what they're called, but that's where you similar sort of thing where you sign the child up to a program and you put it into this particular savings program with the education, whatever. I don't really know what it's called, but it's basically where you pay your fees earlier, I think, and then they help pay them later, or it might be like a bit of a loan situation and things. So try not to encourage too much of that, but it is putting a little bit of money aside for later on. Or again, increasing your income. So if you want this lifestyle that allows for private education and all various other things, maybe you can't go back to work for part-time. Maybe you actually need to go back full-time from the get-go to make sure there's enough cash flow.
Yeah, if that's what you prioritize in that particular situation.
And that's fine. Like, whatever you have to do, like, there's no judgment. If you want to go to work full-time because you like your career, great. Like, that's perfect fine. We need people to do that.
Every child's different. Every situation's different.
Yeah.
Our daughter, she's really big into her dance, which is a significant financial burden to our family. But she
financially crippling.
She loves it, so we're all for it. When it comes to spending, I'm usually pretty in control, and I like to think I sort of don't do too many impulsive purchases. We all have our bad moments, except when it comes to children. For whatever reason, when it comes to my kids' activities, what their clothes, what toys they have, I become a raging spending maniac, and I think is potentially going to that childhood story of things I didn't have when I was a kid. I want to make sure my kids don't experience those things, potentially to the point where I overcompensate in that situation. So in the situation where the kids are getting a little bit older, they have some interests, there's activities or sport or whatever they want to, which obviously there's some cost associated with that. But in a lot of instances, and depending on the sport, more so the time required.
Oh, yeah.
What's some of your tips there of how families can manage that phase of family?
Yeah, and like personally, we're not there yet either. So for me, it's we
Brace
nearly
yourself.
are. So so there's a few things that I want to do with Jock, my eldest, and I'm like, 4 o'clock on a Thursday. I'm at work. Like, that's not going to work. So that was quite surprising to me. And again, it comes down to having like someone, I guess, available at home to do those things.
Yeah.
In terms of budgeting for those things, it's the same sort of thing. I think that to be really realistic with yourself, like, where are you at right now? Do you have little kids? I'm just going to assume that my kids are going to get more expensive as they get older. Like I thought daycare was going to, break the bank or whatever, but I think that as they get older, as things come about that they'll want and need and hopefully they'll like sports, that will all come with a cost. So being realistic right now at wherever you are, how much room do you have in your budget? Do you need to change something significantly? So if you're no children and you're living week to week, like do not have a child because it's just going to make things so much harder. Like try and get that under control. If you've got young children and you're living week to week, well, of course you can't do private school because where's the money going to come from? So it's just having those real conversations about how much real surplus do we have? How much are we actually just spending because it's convenient? And I think a lot of people's banking apps these days have a good spend summary, like the categories and things that you can go through and have a look and actually see where you're spending your money, because you might just need to take it from somewhere to put it to those things if you're not going to be able to increase your income.
With one good tip I have with the sports and the outside activities, and one thing we've implemented a bit ourselves as well, is let's just say your kid starts playing rugby and you make some friends with the parents at the rugby team, coming up with a strategy with them to like share training sessions.
Oh, that's a good idea. Yeah.
Where you do some of the pickups and take all the kids, and then they do one of the other days, can reduce how much afternoons you have to finish early.
Yeah.
And as long as you sort of return the favor, people are generally happy to cooperate in that way. And it's a way of kind of building a unit that you don't have that family situation. That's been a big help for us. And it's a good way to get some, the kids to have some extra relationship building time, and, it's a bit of a play date thing as well. Going back, everything that we've discussed so far goes back to what are you spending? What's your surplus? What's your budget? Now, I know personally, I'm a mortgage broker. We help people do their loan applications all the time. When we're sitting down with people and they go, what's the living expenses? 90% of the time people go, I don't know. They don't really know what they spend. I'm probably much the same, to be honest.
Yeah.
How can people, one, work out what they spend? And then second to that, actually stick, if they make a budget or they make a spending plan, actually stick to that plan without, hours of management each week.
Yeah. And this is something like when I sit down with my clients, I don't go through their line items and budget with them. I'm just literally like, what are you spending? Like, what surplus do you have? And can we just pull it from somewhere else? So I give them a bit of homework. But some of those things are like what we said about running. If you've got a Big Four bank, I think most of them will run a spending summary at the end of the month, which will pretty good categorize it. I don't know about the other banks, but I'm sure they do something similar.
For the most part, they're pretty schmick with their technology and platforms. Your ability to itemize things and expenses are fairly well there.
So I think you need to look back. So what I find when people try to budget is they're like, okay, $100 a week for rates and water or whatever. At like a stab in the dark. Like you actually need to go back and say, okay, over the last, 6 months, what have we spent on these things? And is that higher than normal, or will that probably continue? And then build in a little buffer of like 2 or 3% or something, because it's going to go up with CPI, and use that as your basis to go forward. Or I'll have people that will forget to put things in, like literally think of your rego, your insurances, all your insurances, your house, your car, your personal, all that sort of stuff. So don't miss anything. And be honest. Don't leave stuff off and just be like, oh, that was just like a once off, because that once off probably happens more than you think it does.
Yeah.
And put that in like the discretionary sort of spending category.
Yeah, and Christmas, there's different expenses. They're annual, but it's definitely significant.
Yes.
I like the Money Smart budget planner, the online tool. I
give that to a lot of my clients.
It's quite easy to use, and it prompts you on all the different categories you may have forgotten about. I think a lot of people what I've seen anyway is when they start the budgeting, they might have these quarterly or annually or biannually bills, and they're factoring in, they're getting a weekly pay.
Mm-hmm.
They're factoring in the component of what that cost is, but they're not factoring in where they are within that period of time. So if they have their bills account, they're putting in, rates is $70 a week, but rates is actually due next week.
Yes.
So you're already behind, so you kind of need to catch up. So there's all these, suddenly these we're saving, everything's going well. And then the quarterly, and then the annual bills hit, and then all of a sudden, we got no money again.
Yeah.
Well, it's easy to save when you're not factoring in the reality of costs. You're going, we're making money hand over fist, and then 2 registrations and an insurance bill comes up, and you're going, where did all the savings go?
So I would look at like what savings do you actually have, and if so the way I like to have people budget, and I do myself, is I have a bills account,
Yeah.
and every single bill that I have is direct debited, and whether it's annually, monthly, whatever, it comes from there. So I've just gone and worked out on an annual basis what it is, divided it by 12 and been like, right, every month that amount has to go in there. And I might have started with like $1,000 as a buffer
Yeah.
for
So
that
start with a
random
float.
one. Yeah.
Start with a bit of a float so
That
you don't get
pops up.
caught.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so then by the time, it might be that your rego's due in 11 months and you might have allowed $1,000 for it. So during the year, it kind of all works itself out anyway. As long as you've started with $1,000 or $2,000 there,
Yeah.
then it'll just hopefully build upon itself over time. As
Yeah.
long as I would then also, like I said, add about 5% of fat into that to be like,
Yeah.
okay, just in case we've forgotten something or something goes up more than expected, we're not then digging for.
You've got a bit of a
Yeah.
cushion sitting there. And I think that's an important thing, is to really do that deep dive, account for it, be honest with yourself, because whether you like it or not, you're going to have to pay registration for the car. It might be one car if one of you staying at home with a young child. Have you had any recent stories, I guess, with clients where they've gone and taken a stock of their expenses? I know, that's not necessarily what you guys handle on a day-to-day basis, but where they've gone and sat down as a couple and they've gone, taken a stock of their expenses and just been blown away with where the money's coming in and out and what
Yeah.
they can save?
I think what I see the most is people that come to a financial planning a meeting pretty well know we're going to want to know what they're spending, because that is the core of what we're doing. So they'll already come with, they might send me their bank card transactions or something, or they've done a quasi kind of budget, or some people are amazing. I mean, you would see it too. Like some people have a really good budget.
Yeah, they have the barefoot investor accounts
Yeah,
all
yeah. I
named.
can
Yeah.
smell them like a million
Yeah.
miles away. So they might already have a pretty good idea of what they're spending. But what I do notice is like, okay, they are in control of their spending, but then there's this surplus that's not accounted for that they're just spending because it's there. Like there's clients that have more than enough money, but they don't actually have a strategy to be like, we should probably invest some of this. We should probably maybe pay off a bit more into the house. Maybe we should put some into super. So instead of that money being spent towards something useful, it might just get blown on something random, like a new TV, because we felt like upgrading
why
the
not?
TV,
Yeah.
stuff like that. And so that's probably what I see more of. I will say to people, okay, if you put $1,000 a month into shares instead of just spending it on random stuff, and we'll project it over 10 or 20 years, this is how much potentially you could have in a share portfolio and you could retire before you're 55. That's when they're like, oh, I see.
Yeah.
I
Now I
get the
get what
beauty.
you're doing.
I get
Yeah.
the beauty of compound interest.
So it's just
more,
having a strategy to deal with
Yeah.
that surplus cash flow, because that's what we all want, is that spare money we don't really know what to do with it.
Yeah. How are you going to use these funds to best improve your life? Either paying down the mortgage, increasing your lifestyle, if that is what makes sense
Yeah.
to do, investing for your future. There's obviously a lot of different things that people can do, and it varies depending on their circumstance what the right call is. I know you're in a very unique situation yourself. I know your partner has a successful business that you are operating and involved in as well. I know you also had another business that you've since changed and you've gone back to wages with Mazzy Wealth.
Mhm. Yep.
Talk me through that. What was the thinking around the change, pros, cons, all that sort of stuff?
Yeah. So I think like many women after they have kids, they kind of want to do life on their terms. And so when the business I was working for got sold, I was like, great, this is my opportunity to start my business, because I started a construction business with my husband and I had absolutely no idea what we're doing. I know what I'm doing in financial planning and now I know how to run a business. I should just do this for myself. And it was really good for like the first 12 months. I was like in this little happy bubble of I'm doing this. I'm so proud of myself. Like, woo,
Yep.
boss woman, loving it. And then I think burnout probably started to creep in, because like you do when you start a business, you want to keep costs down and you want to do all the things that you can yourself, which it got to a point at 12 months where I was like, okay, I do need to get some support in. And then I was like, oh, I don't want staff. What am I doing? Like, I have 10 staff in my husband's business that I'm helping manage. Like, I don't want them in mine too. So I was like, okay, people. And then I was like, oh, I'm really tired. My kids are in daycare full time and I never wanted that. Like, I'm now pushed them into 5 days a week of daycare because I need to run my business. And I had to do that to keep up with it. Like, it was growing, which was great, but it was really taking away from my lifestyle. And I stayed in financial planning because it's a very good job, much probably like mortgage broking, around flexibility. Because we're not on a, hourly kind of thing. We're like, this is your body of work that you need to get done. Great, you've met what you need to do to keep the business running. Everyone's happy. So it got to a point where, I was just working late at night, and then I was just unhealthy. I wasn't going to the gym. I wasn't eating well. I was cranky. I was stressed. I then had to, sort out the BAS and make sure everything was ready to go for my business, at the same time doing it for my husband's business, along with, making sure all of his employees were paid properly, and just all the things that stress you out as a business owner in both sides. So there was like no reprieve from that.
Too many hats. Yeah.
Too many hats. And then I do carry the load at home, like a lot of women do. So then it was like the home duties and the mental load of that, and then, all the things that happen when you have little kids started to happen. So it's like, okay, this is too much. I am no longer singing songs in my car on the way to work. Like, I'm just like, got to get to work, hurry up, get out the door, see your kids, bye. And so that's sort of when I had a bit of a breakdown to Delene, because she's a good friend of mine.
Yeah.
And I just said, like, I would love to keep this going, but I cannot have two businesses in one house with no family support and two little kids.
Yeah.
And when I started my business, my kids were 3 and 1. So they were still very dependent on me.
Yeah.
And so I sort of thought, you know what, to give everybody, like, to be a better wife, to be a better mum, I'm a better person when I have a job rather than have a business.
Yeah. And it's comes down to what are you doing it for?
Yeah.
Right. You probably had, some things of improving the circumstances, not just creating your own little prison.
Yeah.
for
golden
yourself.
handcuffs.
Yeah, and it's really hard because I spent my whole career wanting more, and I always knew I wanted to learn more, and I wanted to create more, and I wanted to. That's why I started my Instagram, because I was, love them, but I was seeing so many clients 60 to 70. I'm like, oh, where are the people that I can connect with? Like, where
Yeah.
are all those people? So then I
Yeah.
went online, I started to get younger clients, and I was like building a social media platform that kind of plugged the creativity hole, and I was like happy with that. And then I was still like, no, I want to build something for me. Like, I spent 8 years straight studying, and I just feel like I was always growing and moving. And then all of a sudden I had kids and went back to work, and I stopped.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, well, what do I do now? I've kind of learnt everything in my job. I don't really feel like, I've done all the strategies. I've met different people. I feel like I can talk to people. I feel like I care about all my people. Like, what do I do now? I've hit my
Yeah.
ceiling.
I feel like in life you genuinely can have it all, but maybe you can't have it all at once.
I say that to my clients all the time.
And that's sort of something we've learned. Like, my wife was a real estate agent, and she loves it, and she genuinely loves working.
Yeah.
She really gets a lot out of it and enjoys it. And there's going to be a time in our life when maybe the kid's a little bit older, or the circumstances change, when I'm probably going to need to take the back seat and support her thing and her business. But I think there is a little bit of a trend, and it's sort of upping the business owner route and do it yourself and grind and hustle culture and all this sort of stuff, which is, it's good in a lot of ways, but I think sometimes people take that to an extreme, and at the cost of a lot of other things as well.
Yeah.
We see people that have businesses that they run it in such a way that they're so ambitious in growth that it actually, causes issues and finances in the business and family life
Divorces
and
and
all sorts of, those things. So it's good to have a bit of a, like you said, that moment where you've actually reflected and thought about what's
Yeah.
actually important.
Yeah.
I think that's an important point, because it's not always a case of just more work, work
No.
harder. Right? There's not always the solutions to problems.
And I realized too what I was giving away. Like, it wasn't just like, oh, change my jobs. Like, I'd spent 18 months in a business that was finally doing well. I was like, oh, it takes a long time to get a business off the ground when you start with 0 clients. So I got to a point where I was getting great referrals, good clients, that sort of stuff, building my client book. And then I was just like, this feels like too heavy for me to continue carrying.
It's such an interesting realization, because it's promoted everywhere on social media. Start up a Shopify and make $1 million, or become your own boss, and you've got to the stage where you've gathered that momentum.
Yeah.
And you're starting to get the momentum, and you're just doing the stock take and going, is this really what I want? Is this what I want to prioritize and continue watering? And it's a conversation that a lot of people don't tend to have with themselves internally, or with their significant other.
They're like, what's the other option? Like, I go back and do this job, and genuinely, some people might be able to earn significantly more doing that for themselves than somewhere else. Like,
And then probably
it's
feel like they're going backwards, maybe.
it's a lot to walk away from.
But it's a case of, you're probably in a similar situation. It's not that you can never go back to it
Yeah.
and it's gone forever. It's just a case of maybe let's just be a little bit strategic here for the time being.
And now, like I said, with the like, okay, what are we building? So now my husband and I are focusing on our investments. I'm like, okay, let's just use this money instead of building a business with it. Let's build assets that we can then do something with. So ideally, like my husband's a bricklayer and he's been doing it since he was 15. You know, he's 31, but he probably feels like a 40-year-old man. Like, so for me, I'm like, okay, well, let's get in
Makes
a
my back
position.
hurt just thinking about
You
it.
know,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
worked with them recently for one day, and I will say I have a new appreciation for the boys out there.
Yeah.
I was their labourer for one day, but it was good fun. Nice change from the office.
Yeah.
But my idea is that in the next 5 to 6 years, he can just, if he doesn't want to do the business, then he can do whatever the hell he wants. Like,
Yeah.
he'd love to change careers probably and do something else. And so, great, in 5 years, we'll have enough buffer that you can just go and take your time to pick something else that you want to do that's not going to harm your health.
Yeah. So it's obviously, making sure the bills are paid, making sure the family is covered and everyone's all okay and happy, but then the decisions you're making giving you more choices in the future rather than less.
Yeah.
Like buying the $2 million house now, what's that actually doing? Is that giving you more choices for the future or less, or buying the expensive car? What's the true cost
That's right.
of all those things? Because ultimately it's a pretty positive thing whether you decide to or not, but having the luxury to go, oh, you know what, I want to go try this industry. Like that's a good option to have whether you pursue that or not. What's some of the going, obviously been on wages, self-employed, back to wages, what are some of the things that you're now enjoying as an employee?
Yeah. Shutting the door.
Yeah.
Work, because I work from home still. So I think that's another trap. Working from home can be very toxic.
Yeah.
You're on your own all day and there's the house of mess around you. It's very hard to turn off from that. But I have better boundaries as an employee than what I did when I was self-employed. And I also think my husband has better boundaries too. Like, he won't now ring and be like, I need another bag of sand. Can you run it out to me? Whereas before I'd love to because I could, and it was like nice to be able to do that.
Yeah.
But I probably wasn't being honest with myself that I needed to be in the office working because I was going to be up late at night catching up for it. So having those boundaries in place to focus on work is work time and home is home time, and having my Wednesdays back with the boys has been really refreshing. And I probably could have just done that for myself. Like, in hindsight, that's probably a huge problem I had, was like not strict enough boundaries. But it also felt so nice to have that freedom. So like, I've lost the freedom to, just hop up and go somewhere, go to the gym or do whatever I really, really want to do half the day. But then the boundaries in place allow me actually more time to do that anyway, because now I'm not so tired. So I get up at 5:30 and I go out the back and I do a workout and I feel great.
And it's not all the extra things with the business, like the bookkeeping.
Yeah. I mean, I still have that for Lockie, but
yeah, well,
it's not,
it's not doubling
yeah,
it.
for one business instead of two. So,
yeah.
Jay, this has been fantastic. I think you have a really cool insight around finance, and it's a really down to earth approach. It's not just the old financial planner pointing at the Vanguard chart with the save, 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 and invest, invest, invest. I think it's a really realistic, down to earth approach that a lot of people can get from. So, firstly, what's one thing that you feel like is important to share, and also where can people find you?
Yeah. Oh God. Okay. We've covered so much today. I just think being honest with yourself about where you are financially, and put the blinkers on and don't look at what your friends doing, because your friends could have, not traveled, not partied, nothing in their 20s, and now in their 30s they're reaping the benefits of building up their businesses or their careers or whatever it is. Everybody's at a different phase. And I can tell you, a lot of my 30-year-old clients who have significant wealth, it's come from inheritance or it's generational wealth that they've been gifted. So your friends are probably not ever going to be truly honest. You might have a small group of friends, they're going to tell you how they're really doing, but it's hard out there, and your 30s are very much for just staying afloat, making small, good choices, and it all gets better as time goes on because we've got compounding interest. And yeah, if you want to find us, you can find me at Jayde_financial advisor on Instagram is the best place. Otherwise, we do also have a website, mazzywealth.com.au, where my boss, Stelline, and I have a great team there to support you.
Awesome. Do you have anything to add, Bob?
Thanks so much for your time. There's so much ground that we've effectively covered, and it's really just honest, wholesome conversation. about what you don't know if you're entering that chapter. So reach out to Jayde if you've got some questions or queries or you'd
Thanks,
like to
guys.
get started.
Thank you.
Thanks.